Hi there, I'm Hugh Martin, and you're watching a podcast where nostalgia comes alive. It's Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. Roll it.
Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. Join Jake and his friends on a journey through pop culture of the past, where they interview professionals in the worlds of acting, directing, writing, puppeteering, and so much more. Who will they be chatting with today? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, the podcast where nostalgia comes alive. Happy here with us. Thank you for joining. As always, I'm your host, Jake Duffenbaugh. Me today, of course, our co-hosts, Chris Bixby and Matt Bingo. How you guys?
We're doing good.
Hi, everyone. How are you? How you doing, Jake?
Doing great, Matt. Thank you for asking. Well, everyone, we have a quite an interview that you all were about to see. It was such a fun one. Chris, take us home. What we have for today?
Yeah, so I mean, as a lot of you probably know, in the past we've interviewed director Hugh Martin. Wonderful guy.
He's great.
Has gone on to be a great friend of ours, and he
absolutely is.
And he helped kind of put us in touch with his wife, Kristin Martin. She co-created the Magic School Bus for television. She helped to develop shows like Cyberchase and The Puzzle Place and Clifford the Big Red Dog. Whole bunch of things. Talk about her work with Nickelodeon, PBS, Hit Entertainment, whole lot more. We hope you guys enjoy the interview. Here it is.
See you then. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, the podcast where nostalgia comes alive.
Yes, happy you're here with us, folks. Today, we're happy to be joined by Kristin Martin. Kristin, happy to have you here. How are you?
I'm just fine, thank you. I'm just fine.
That's wonderful.
Happy to be here with you guys.
Good to hear.
Wonderful.
Wonderful to hear, likewise.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, likewise indeed. So to kick this off, could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I'm a writer, I'm a producer, executive producer, production company owner. I've been working in TV and film for a very long time. Started out as an English teacher, but realized one time when I was when I was studying at the University of Texas at Austin on my PhD, and we were all up at 3 o'clock in the morning building a set. And I said to myself, this is really fun. I'm usually up at 3 o'clock in the morning doing research, but there's all these people and that's lots of fun. And so that's kind of how I made a transition or was inspired to make a transition from academia into production.
Nice.
Interesting. Very interesting. So what was your childhood like and how did you grow up?
Oh, I was very lucky. I'm a second oldest of 4. Suburban Philadelphia. Really kind of when I was growing up, it was very suburban, like brand new. Very, just very quiet. It was interesting. I never watched TV, but my sisters did. I never watched animation, but my younger sisters did. I was just always either too busy outside or too busy reading. That was my favorite place was the library. I could get really excited about a trip to the library and come home with stacks and just use my imagination to go anywhere. Was really, really fun.
Love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Did you always want to get into television?
No, I really didn't. I had absolutely no desire, no interest. As I said, what transpired, I was pursuing a very academic career in Shakespeare and comparative lit. And but I realized, and I wanted to write a definitive book on Shakespearean film, American Shakespearean film. But I realized that I wouldn't be able, it was pretty naive to think I could write that if I didn't know anything about making a film. I
Right.
know I've been studying this other stuff and theater production and theater history and all the academics. I studied at the Shakespeare Institute in England. I had all that down, but I didn't know the first thing about. So that's why I wound up at the University of Texas. I had applied there to do an interdisciplinary PhD in English drama and film, so I could write this great book, which I never did because I got distracted in the middle of the whole thing. And it's been very, very exciting and very, very, very satisfying. I just have always had a very, very creative mind and a very organized. So really for me to, as I said, I started out as a teacher. I've taught everything from elementary school through junior high through in this country and in England, college courses. I taught television production at UT. There was, I don't know, I just related to the making of it. There's all different ways of being creative. And I found everything, it was fascinating because so much of what I had learned and was in my head, I was able to use. It's like I remember building sets, as I said, in the middle of the night at UT, and just kind of knowing what it needed to look like because I'd read so much. I'd read so many descriptions of different environments, different places where stories take place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it was very satisfying to just kind of go, oh, here's a cool outlet for all that information. And it's, and Jocelyn will tell you, I've been that way ever since. I would never overlook an opportunity to make some kind of literary comment out of a little kid's mouth, or it might be a rephrasing of a little bit of Shakespeare or something. But it was, it's just salt and pepper.
Nice.
Interesting, very interesting. So you began your career in television as a coordinator on the award-winning PBS series Great Performances.
Oh, I know. I was so excited.
Could you talk a bit
That's
about
how that was the other big thing. I was at UT, and actually I should say I started that was like a real position. I was initially there was a project that PBS and W was doing that was shooting in Texas called Charlie Smith and the Fritter Tree, which actually is where I met Hugh. And
Oh.
and so you had this crew from the West Coast and from the East Coast and everything shooting in all the hinterlands of Texas to tell the story of this fellow who at the time was the oldest living American. He was 135. And they had the stimulus for this was they had his bill of sale from when he was sold as a young boy in New Orleans. So it was truly verified that Charlie was that old, and it was quite a telling tale. So anyway, so you have all these Yankees and all these Los Angeles people descending on Texas, and they were looking for PAs or coordinators or whatever. And I was like, I was a Yankee who could talk Texan. I'd been down there for 3 years. So that's how it's why I got the job. And I ran the production office. I would help scout locations. It was like living history when I think about it, because we were in the middle of nowhere, and one of the scenes from the film is a lynching. And I was running this production office, and outside my little house that they rented for me, the carpenters were building crosses. And then one Saturday night, we had a scene of Charlie's best friend's lynching. And it was like, and they lit that thing up, and you were nowhere. There was no lights anywhere. And I was like, there's a lot to this way of storytelling, and it was quite profound. I don't know why I got back on that, but whenever I think about that, that scene always comes to mind.
Gotcha.
And the power of that mode of storytelling. I suppose if I'm anything, what I've always been is a storyteller and interested in telling stories and how to tell stories, and character-driven stories in particular. That's kind of my thing.
Right. So you then went on to produce the ABC soap opera All My Children. What
Yeah.
was that like?
Nonstop.
Ah.
Nonstop. Because well, the shows are on 5 days a week. And then the shows are also on holidays. So it's nonstop. And 1 week a month, you work 6 days. All the others were 5. But the studio never closed. It ran 24/7. It was open. So if you would, a typical day would start at 7:30 in the morning when the director and the actors were arriving for their preliminary rehearsals. And then at 10 o'clock, we'd have a camera rehearsal. We have a mandatory lunch break, union break at 1, and at noon. And at 1:15, we're in the studio for our first rehearsal, dress rehearsal, then notes at 3 o'clock. And then ideally you're done by 6:30. The amount of times that you were done at 6:30 was so incredibly rare. And it was not we had, I mean, yeah, if you went as late as 8 o'clock at night, you had to have a mandatory dinner break. And so you didn't come back till 9. And then all your rates for all your union members go up. So these are the kinds of things that are in your head just in the making of it. And as opposed to the way it was set up is we had an executive producer and then 2 producers. And my counterpart, Tom, his primary responsibility was the crew. My primary responsibility was the cast. And of course, then all 3 of us worked as a team.
Nice.
That helped. But yeah, as soon as we struck the set, say we struck the set at 8 o'clock, then everybody like they come in, we stop for the day. They start striking the set and putting up for the next day. The lighting crew would be coming in at about 11 or 12. They all worked all night long, so that when we arrived at the crack of dawn, we were ready to go for the next. It just nonstop. So it was a lot of fun, incredibly challenging. It was working with Agnes Nixon was a remarkable opportunity. Again, storytelling. I mean, how do you would do 6 months of story, develop 6 months of story at a time, and then you break it up, over the months and weeks and days and how you're going to tell it. And of course, you're always changing it. I mean, it was just so huge to, hard to wrap your head around. But when you're in it, you do. And the other thing that was what's really wonderful about it is you have all these different aspects of production, and you have your actors. Well, it all changes once it gets in the mouth of the actors. And you see, oh, well, we wanted it to be that we were thinking, oh, but the way she said that, in actual fact, I see a hole over here, and we could drive a truck through that and maybe have a good murder story. But I mean, it's this feedback line between creators, writers, makers, and cast. And don't forget, music and effects. They're all characters, and they're all, in my mind, they're all equal characters, and they have their own importance and their own way of totally shifting, bringing something you hadn't thought of until that moment.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
But it was
now,
I mean, you're just tired. Tired.
Well, it's great to hear. Well, that's great to hear indeed. Nonetheless. So I'm kind of curious. So how did like working on those shows, and of course that we talked about already, kind of transition into working in children's television?
Well, remember, I was a teacher. I was, not only a literary scholar, but a trained teacher, and a lot of experience with all different age groups. So for me, I mean, and it came, I mean, I left the show. We were at a period where we had a change of VP, and it was a good time to say, okay, I'm going to do something else. I'm tired. Um, and, but I've always loved kids, and I know an awful lot about what kids read and what is appealing and stories for kids. I had studied it, and who I was, quite frankly. So it really wasn't hard. What I found, I'm trying to think, the first thing I did, well, plus Hugh worked for Fred Rogers. So
Right.
through what,
Mhm.
Yes, he did.
yeah, Hugh and I been married for quite some time at this point. So our worlds really, really crossed over. I forget where I was going with that. I mean, the first thing I did was Babysitters Club for Scholastic and HBO, and then Scholastic said, we've got this grant from the National Science Foundation to, the owner of the company thinks that these set of books should be a TV show on PBS, and that was their assignment, and we'd like you to help us do that. And I was like, well, okay, books to, from one form into another. I knew an awful lot about different, how a property can change or be enhanced, depending on the medium that you put it in, whether it started as a book or vice versa. But what I didn't realize that these crazy books, after I said, oh yeah, sure. And 4 books arrived at the house, and I was like, nothing happens here. I don't know how familiar you are with the original, well, all of the original books, because a lot of the later books were redos of episodes. Nothing happens. The big idea, and you can't, and nobody has a personality except for Frizz, the bus, the lizard, and Arnold. That was it. So you're like, and there's lots of information. I mean, they're wonderful books. They're an interactive book. It's like, wow, here's a great illustration of these kids at the beach and all kinds of visual little gags in the drawing, and then on the side are these reports written by students in the class that are giving you the details of why a crab is a crab, and you're kind of like, huh, and you're back and forth like that, and kids love them because I think because they were interactive.
Right.
But what do you do now, Coach? I mean, you look at the bus, you look at those illustrations, and on purpose, the design was very retro. They wanted it to be evergreen, and it really was the Clash and Frizzle. That's it. And so for me, I'm like, but there's a piece missing. It's another character here. Character is the science. And how do we make it come alive? How do we make it concrete? How do we make it memorable? You certainly don't do that by telling a story and then filling in appropriate science. Just doesn't.
Right.
So there has to be a reason, not just, I mean, Frizz always has a reason. She wants to teach him about whatever. And her methodology is that she will get them in a situation and they'll learn it. They'll witness it. That's the big difference. In the books, they just
Right.
witness it. What I felt had to happen and what we did is we had to make them experience it in one form or another. There had to be a reason. And of course, it's great fun because it's a cartoon. It's like, okay, let's just make the most ridiculous reason. We got, oh, if we don't do this, we're going to die. We got to figure this out. And oh, just a second, according to my research, such and such, and if we're just patient enough, I think, yes, there it is. Oh God, look out, it's coming to get us, go to black. So it's very different energy
Right.
than the book said. And the curious thing is when we went into production,
Absolutely.
there were 4 books, 4 titles, and there were 6 million in print. So it was a successful book property. After our first season, there were 4 books and 12 million in print. So the impact of the show was quite profound on the property, which just helped us, do more and go further. So okay, that's kind of, I can get into all kinds of detail about how, from a producer standpoint, but of all the pieces, there's just so many pieces. As I said earlier, first thing we had to do is we need more kids. We can't have just 2 characters who talk. That's gonna be pretty boring.
Yeah.
Really boring. So what we did is we wanted a really and we needed to develop the personalities. So we wanted a really nice cross section of kids, a nice multicultural representation. And so that we came up with 8 characters, 8 kids, including our own. And of course, the animation house Nelvana is like, you got to be kidding us. You got to be kidding. You want 8 kids, a teacher, a lizard, and a bus. That's typical half-hour animated series has no more than 5. There's just not enough room. There's not enough pencil mileage. It just isn't. And then well, I'm sorry, that's what we have to do if we're gonna, because the science is a character too, as I said, and the music and the effects. So that we had a lot of tugging, a lot of back and forth on that. And I will say, if one person you really should talk to is my counterpart, Larry Jacobs from Nelvana. Larry's in Canada. And he works for everybody. He was at Nelvana at the time. Larry and I were, well, first, and God, this kid, do you want all this detail? Because it was very complicated.
It's a great story.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
Indeed.
Well, coming
We
from,
love long answers.
all right. Oh, you like long answers? Okay. All right. Well, coming from doing a soap, typically you had like about 100 people or more involved in that production. So as the producing team, you're managing all of them, and your vision is going through each one of theirs. Your fingerprints are on each area to make the whole. With animation, you've got that many artists, and you don't know them. And then, because all the design work and storyboarding happened in Toronto, and then the initial key scenes, and then it all gets shipped to Korea to be animated, and then it comes back to us to do music and effects. So do you see what I mean? It's like, it was a long process for one. And we were funded by the National Science Foundation, so everything had to be absolutely 100% correct. No, 'cause, 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 ' And it actually was pretty, I remember being very, very overwhelmed and pleased when we had a meeting at the NSF one time. We came in after, I guess, after the first season, and there in the lobby of the National Science Foundation is a big Magic School Bus and characters on the wall. It was like, oh my God.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, wow.
It's something.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
And they were very, very supportive, very, very supportive, because you're like, we're breaking rules, kind of like we're gonna do a show. What's a great way to do a show about oh my God, what would this be about? Molecules.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
What the heck? And what does an 8-year-old kid care about a molecule?
Exactly right.
What? So we, all right, here's, I'm trying to be linear if I can. So one of the first things I did, well, I'm gonna back up, because I had said I'm gonna talk about the enormity of the project, and I could see how big it needed to be. And I said this, and Scholastic said, you don't have to worry about it. We have a science content director, a former NSF fellow, and he lives in Portland, Oregon, and yeah, and he's on board. And I'm like, uh-huh. Now, this is before Zoom. This is before all we had was fax machines and mail or the phone. So Michael is there, and I said to them, well, I got to get this writing team together. I got a lot of people I'm thinking about, but I can't be everywhere, so I really need a head writer. So they said, oh, okay. Here's Jocelyn. And I'm like, we never met. We don't know each other. Oh, hi. But she's on the phone. And she's on the phone. I'm like, okay. So I got Michael in Portland, Oregon. I got Larry in Canada, and the rest of the animators in Korea. And now Jocelyn is in Scotland. And we're in Manhattan. Okay. Yeah. Let's see what our budget can handle.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
It's crazy.
so it was pretty crazy. So what I insisted that I had learned the power of this from working on a soap. We all had to know one another. We all had to work in person periodically. You know where they're coming from. You know what their needs are. You know what their issues are. So I included in my budget bringing Jocelyn and Michael and the director and assistant director into New York for a week, periodically, at least 4 times a year. I'd have to go back and look at the master calendar and see how it was, but it was at least that. Because just, talking to a speakerphone in the middle of the table, and you got these people, it just doesn't do it, and you're trying to create something together. And everybody was so totally different. So that was one. Then it was like, okay, science team. We have developed our characters. We have our 8, we have their personalities, and we're happy to introduce you to them. But we need you to tell us what the typical, our target kid was second semester, second grade, first semester, third grade. What do they know? What don't they know? What are their misconceptions? What do they want to know? Who are they? And P.S., what is the big idea that you want them to walk away with from experiencing this episode? The one big idea. And they're like, oh, and they would, just like talking to a writer, they'd go off about all these things. No. You get one. This is a 22-minute show, because we had to have we had to make it for foreign distribution as well. PBS half hour is 28 minutes and change. 22 minutes, that's all you got. So this is all pre-production before we started doing anything. This is all just kind of setting up the sources. So being an English teacher, I assigned them the task for each topic they wanted to do. I needed a good 20-page paper that identified what is the one big idea and what are the three, no more than three, supporting organizing principles that will allow us to make the big idea come alive. So I was like, oh, the chutzpah. I can't believe I did that. And also all those other things I talked about had to be in that, and it had to be peer reviewed. And the other big piece was it had to be accompanied by a visual Bible. Because again, you got a bunch of artists up in Toronto and you say, okay, we're going to do a praying mantis. Well, they'll probably go, oh, good. We're going to have big eyes and the this and the that and the no. It had to be scientifically correct.
Yeah.
How do you make tension, story, move forward, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That was our situation. So when we would gather everybody, so we would have a science team writers meeting, and of course, Larry and his AD would be there. And the science team in the morning would present the science to us. In essence, they would teach us what it was. For example, music or sound, sorry, sound. The big idea was all sound is vibration. So I'm like, okay, that's really abstract because I only experience it through my ears. I don't know what a vibration looks like. I guess maybe if I look at water, I don't know. And I mean, I'm being honest. I mean, I had no science. I had none. Except a horrible biology class in high school. And I said, I'm never doing any science ever again. And offended my aesthetic sense. A little idiot. So they had to make in this presentation to us, after we've gotten the science Bible, we'd all read it, we all had lots of questions. They physically had to make it real to us, help us find a way to do it. Once that morning that was done, then, and everybody was like, okay, I think maybe we could, then the writing team was excused to go do whatever. Sorry, the science team go do whatever. And then the writing team, and I insisted again, this is what we did on All My Children. You can't have a writer locked up in their house and not experience not have any of the knowledge about why you're doing what. And we know, we really know that this character likes to do, or this actor is really good at that. So if we could work it in, it might make it, you learn, as I was saying, you learn from the actors. So then I would lock the writers and myself in a room and nobody was allowed out till we had a story. And then we'd invite the science team to come back and we'd do the opposite. We would pitch the story to the science team. And hopefully our story worked. And that discussion would also illuminate even further ways of going. These meetings it was like usually 2 or 3 days at once. And here's a classic example of why that works so well. One time, and this is really a toughie for me because I had no idea, no way to visualize this. They wanted to do light and the way light breaks up into the spectrum, right? You're showing me all these things with crystals and I can see that it's going, but I got to draw it. I got to draw it. I can't have I can't be holding that up to a little kid's eye and seeing what he sees. Can I? How do I do that? So the whole time this is going on and this discussion is going on, and the writers are itchy too. We're all like, I don't know how we're going to do this. I don't know how we're going to do this. Larry is drawing. He's drawing. And then he finally picks up his paper and he goes, well, how about something like this? And what he had drawn was a picture, was a scene where the bus bangs into a crystal and is separated into 8 buses. One's red, one's orange, one's yellow. It's the whole color spectrum. It was like, oh my God. So that's what I'm saying. It's a real team effort. And just a lot of creative minds driving each other nuts.
Absolutely. So also during your work with children's television, you were the vice president of production for Nickelodeon. Can you talk a bit about your work with them?
Yeah, we had finished School Bus. And they called me. They were interested in moving into narrative production, you know, out of game shows and stuff like that. So I was brought in to and they had just built the 2 studios at Universal. And the deal with Universal was that they would be in production 24/7 every day. 2 studios. So we had to supply production for those studios. So it was kind of like, you know, with you coming from soaps and, you know, in a little bit of this kind of magnitude of work, and how to create character-driven narratives. So that was my assignment. And I really enjoyed it, but I found it very exhausting and kind of interfering with my own life, because we have been trying to have a family for quite some time. And just not happening. So I didn't stay real long. I left because I was like, you know what, I can't be traveling to Florida every week. It was like, this is my heart's desire, and it's just not going to work that way. So I left them, and shortly thereafter, Scholastic calls and said, well, we would like you to produce Babysitters Club for us. So I said, oh, okay, I can do that. That's limited. And it wasn't traveling to Florida every week. So, and then they asked me, after I finished that, they asked me to do School Bus, and lo and behold, I didn't know when I signed on. I said, oh, I didn't know that I finally was pregnant. So it was a very happy ending.
Nice.
Interesting. So on Nickelodeon, you were one of the executive producers on the game show Make the Grade. What was working on that like?
I didn't have a lot to do with that. I didn't really have a lot to do with the game shows. They kind of had their own. They had been going and they had their own rhythm. And I was a whole other focus on volume of production, volume of show ideas, all kinds of whatever. Oh my God, there were just so many crazy things that we came up with. It was just overwhelming. The volume was just overwhelming to really get into any one of them. I mean, one thing we did, they wanted to, this was fun. This was something that helped, I related to one of the other things they wanted to do. They wanted to develop Nick at Night with their own product, because up until that point, it had been all reruns. And they're like, no, we really want to create. And so we did, of course, and the name just went right out of my head. It was, The Early Days, which was really fascinating because it was about the early days of television. It was about the television in the 50s. And we found all these old big honking cameras, and ironically, one of the directors on All My Children had worked at NBC in the early 50s. So he was like, oh, Jack, tell us what you did, tell us how it worked. So it was a wonderfully synergetic. So that was one that we did. That was kind of the first creeping into doing some of their own animated, their own live action stuff. I was going to say my first love is live action, but animation is really, really fun too.
That's great. So you're also co-created and executive produced the Nick game show Out Here. How did that kind
I remember that. I do remember that. It just makes me tired thinking about it. That's all. Oh golly, it just makes me tired. I just see this studio full of screaming kids.
Was that like another kind of like overwhelming kind of
Yeah,
project?
it was one of the shows that we had see, because the other piece of the agreement with Universal is that these two studios, one of the reasons they had to be in constant production is that they were a stop on the tour. So we had live audiences coming through to watch us make a show as part of their visit to Universal. I mean, it boggles the mind. It just boggles the mind of so many things to think of. So that's like when I remember that one, it's like, oh God, I just remember all these people. I remember the costumed team being really upset because these people kept pulling at their clothes. Well, it was just, I was like, no, I'm just not going to do it. I don't need to do it.
So, as we've
Thank you.
As we've talked about a little bit, of course, the Babysitters Club, which was that was before Magic School Bus, right?
Yeah, it was before. That was really, really fun. Really fun. Very tight timeline. I mean, we had to get 3 episodes out. Very short amount of time. All shot on location. Within union rules of New York, which is always interesting. But the other thing that happened during Babysitters Club is there was a union strike. It wasn't IA, it was it IBEW? I forget which one now. Or was it Teamsters? It might have been Teamsters. Anyway, of all the movies being shot in the New York area, of all the primetime shows being shot on New York location, who do they decide to strike? Whose set do they decide to strike as an example? Babysitters Club.
Exactly.
Go figure. Because it would be they could make their point, but it would be the least disruptive to the membership, but they're making their point. So we're on a really tight schedule, and I arrive at the set to find out I have to turn around because it was, where were we? I think we were in New Jersey somewhere. I had to turn back around and go back to Manhattan to meet with all the union lawyers to get this thing resolved so we could get back to work. All the little things you don't think of.
Absolutely. Yeah, Babysitters Club is a wonderful show.
Oh, I loved it. Really did. Those kids were so good.
Yeah.
They were so good. It was a shame, I don't know, because somebody else had produced a couple of them before me. And I just never could understand why HBO didn't do more. They were really well done, and they're really good shows. But anyway.
Absolutely.
Going back to Magic School Bus, do you have any favorite episodes that you wrote
Oh,
for?
golly.
Tough, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
There were so
well,
many.
there's so many.
So many
and
great ones, yeah.
Yeah.
We did 52. We did 50.
Right.
Um, and there's so many. Because the more we did, the more we loosened up Scholastic as far as what we could actually do. Because initially it was only the bus could become something. And then it was like we were
Right.
like, well, you want us to talk about reptiles? What if all the kids got turned into different kinds of reptiles?
Hmm.
And have to survive. And they can talk about, oh God, I need a mosquito or whatever. I'm really hungry. You see what I mean?
Oh
It's
my
like
gosh.
that's what snakes eat or whatever it was, frogs eat, but you don't have to say frogs eat mosquitoes. You
Right.
can say, I'm really hungry, and the kid will remember the scene. It's funny, it's silly. I mean, some of the initiatives, like in order to do molecules, it's the kids are just coming back from vacation, from a week's vacation, and Wanda goes nuts because somebody stole her pickle.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. Yep.
And
Yeah.
Fun.
basically, it was,
Right.
we had to go inside the pickle juice. We get to be this big. And we're seeing all the different things
Is it
running.
the maid? Is it the maid's molecule? Is it that one?
And no, that's
Or is it a different one?
molecule. That's the name of Dolly Parton's character.
Oh
We
yeah. Dolly Parton's
I
on the show. I remember
Okay.
that.
yeah, we did
Gotcha.
the a Christmas special.
Ah yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
holiday special. Yeah.
I love the
Holiday
Christmas
special.
special.
Wonderful.
Which
Yeah,
Hugh
and the
directed.
Halloween episode.
Hugh
too.
directed our live action stuff.
Oh cool.
Ooh.
Oh
And
wow, nice.
oh yeah, we had a lot of fun. And the idea, well, I mean, I'm from the Philadelphia area, and I grew up here, retired back here now, but the Natural History Museum in Philadelphia always, or for a very long time, would do kids sleepovers. So you could spend the night in the museum as part of a museum, not a gabillion kids, and I always wanted to do that. So yeah, this is the Halloween special. So I talked to them, and of course, the Natural History Museum in Philadelphia is the oldest natural history museum in the United States. It was started with Thomas Jefferson's collection. And in the basement of this museum, you got stuff like you wouldn't believe from the beginning of the United States. So we're in there, and I don't know, we needed a bat for something, and they're just like, oh, wait a minute, okay. And somebody runs downstairs and comes back with this dead bat. And it's like, do you need this guy? Where oh, it's supposed to be alive, but okay, you'll make it work.
Oh my gosh.
And we were, and then the most fun thing was that, the kids, they spend the night, and then this sarcophagus starts going crazy, and out pops this ridiculous explorer, and it's Lily. And you don't know until the very end that it's Miss Frizzle, because when she turns her head,
Yeah, right.
there's this little red curl.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I knew it. Anyway, we had so much fun.
That's awesome.
We really had a lot of fun.
That's great.
That's awesome.
I love the episodes you got to kind of like co-wrote in the haunted house.
Yes.
Yeah,
Gets
haunted
An-
house was fun. Yeah.
Gets Anne's in its pants and the wet all over.
Yeah.
Wet All
Such
Over is a
fun
great
episodes.
one.
Those
That's
are
probably
good
one of my
one.
favorites.
Thanks. It's,
wonderful.
they
You're welcome.
well, the haunted house, I mean, there are two haunted houses. There's one, the first time we did it was a sound museum. And
Yeah, that's in the first season. Yeah.
that was,
It's
and
like the
that
early one,
was so that was because sound is vibration, and because we were in this magical house, we could see the vibrations when you fell on a drum or whatever, or but and we had Carol Channing as that was the other piece that was so much fun. We never paid anybody more than scale, not even Lily. And I just get these ideas like, wouldn't it be really fun if we could get, it's all about sound. Who's got a crazy voice at that time? Had Ed Asner. What in the that was the one about the praying mantis, and she takes. It's actually supposed to be about spiders, but this is a good story. The spiders actually is a really good story in terms for understanding the synergy between the two stars, science and story. So they wanted to do spiders. Well, why? Well, you got to do spiders. Well, why? Well, spiders have 8 legs, so I have 2.
Right. Yeah, talking
So
about
what?
from the ants. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right.
Why? So what? What does it matter? I'm like,
Yeah.
like, you guys, you have to give us more. I can't tell a story unless I have a verb. So at one point in
Right.
frustration, I don't know, it was Michael, I don't know who it was, but it said, well, all spiders trap their food. I said, I beg your pardon. Could you repeat that? All spiders trap their food. And I'm like, well, now that could be interesting. Maybe they're going to trap the kids as food. That's a good verb. Could go kinds of ways with that. So what we actually did, which was really fun. And again, she takes them to a drive-in theater, because we had to find a place where we have a lot of spiders, something that's like abandoned. So she takes them to this abandoned drive-in movie theater. And there is a black and white 50s B movie playing with Ed Asner playing the general who is trying to catch this giant praying mantis. And the reason for the praying mantis is because praying mantises eat spiders. But anyway, so the movie, so you had this black and white movie up that, 2 stories running, which is really like a ripoff of Godzilla. And the kids ultimately wind up in the black and white movie. So they go for, anyhow, it's just layer upon layer upon layer, which is like ridiculous. But point is, they witness, anyhow, I don't have to tell you the whole story, but the point of that is the synergy point for me with the 2, as I said, the 2 stars was to find a verb that they share that we could then begin to tell a story with, rather than just description.
That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, the amazing, one of our previous guests, the amazing Joshua Stevenson, kind of got to co-create the series, and oh my gosh, and for what her part, kind of creating it is just Joshua is just the best.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I love Jocelyn. Another PBS series that you helped create and produce was Cyberchase.
Yeah.
What was that show like? I absolutely loved that show growing up.
I'm glad. I'm really,
It was
yes, me
wonderful
too.
show, and it's still
And
going.
it's still going. Yeah, the
Yeah.
great thing is NBC. Sorry.
Yeah, after like 15 seasons still going on. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they'll do 1 or 2 episodes and call it a season, but the point is, the tough part is funding. We would have done more than the 52, but we had no more funding. What had happened was we had a good $1 million from McDonald's, and we had a big chunk of money from Microsoft. And we're developing games with them. And then as we were completing the 4th season, Microsoft decided to get out of the business of CDs and DVDs for kids and shut that division down. And that's where the money had been coming from. So all of a sudden, we're describing the 5th season, and there's no we just couldn't. It was a big budget. It was a very big budget. We just couldn't get it fast enough. So I forget where I was going with that. So what happened? So we were finished, and then I get a phone call from Channel 13 from NET wanting to talk, and the NSF had they had been wanting to do Cyberchase. They had the idea for it, they had the characters for it, that they had for a good 10 years and had not been able to make a go of it. And so I was recommended to them by Highfield at the National Science Foundation, and we all clicked. And that was a lot of fun. And it was the same thing. I was like, okay, we have to, for the hacker, we got to get somebody, we got to need a really good actor. And we called up Christopher Lloyd, who can, yes, it was, I was thinking, I mean, he was such a wonderful villain in Roger Rabbit, if you remember that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, he would be perfect. And he said, sure. He said, sure. And what a joy. Well, both of them. I mean, Lily, same thing. They would do anything. They were so talented. And Christopher he's very shy, very, very quiet. And then he gets in the booth and he's tearing his shirt off, and you know what I mean? He's just big and giving it everything he's got, everything he's got. And then he'd look at you like, is that okay? I'm like, oh my God. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
But that was a tough one too,
That's
because I
wonderful.
mean, it was a similar problem trying to make math news you could use.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of was the,
Yeah.
you know, as I said, with school bus, it was the verb, and with Cyberchase, it's the utility. To find, why do I care about this math? Because hey, you know, it just might come in handy.
It might, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, but
That's what was
yes.
driving those stories.
Yeah, I feel like I think who brought this up? Jennifer Barnhart brought this up similarly with Between the Lions.
Jen, yes.
Because
Yeah, she's
they
great.
were, I think it was at the end of their third season, they also
Yeah.
ran out of money.
Yeah.
I forgot who was funding them at the time, but they also ran out of money.
Oh gosh.
I think
Yeah.
they were in because they were filming in New York at the time, so they moved their whole production to Mississippi. I forget
Yes.
how
remember
she
that.
described it. I
She
forget how
said basically that that in New York they couldn't fund the show anymore, so they were doing this like event in Mississippi,
That's
and
right.
then someone who was there asked, you know, like, when will we see more? And then she said, you know,
there will be no more.
there's no funding. And then the Mississippi Public Broadcasting people said, we would love to
Help.
fund more seasons of the show, as long as, you know, you film in our location, and, you know, we'll have our crew and puppeteers work with you. So that's kind of how that happened.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what I remember.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Puppeteers are awesome. Puppeteers are
They
awesome.
are.
Yes.
Indeed
Yes.
they
I mean-
they're just nicest.
They
When
really
I
are.
when I started out with school bus, and you know, looking for writers, I mean, of course, I knew a lot of soap opera writers, and I knew a lot of other writers, but I also hired several puppeteers, because I don't know what it's like to write for an animated character, and I wanted a very alive, you know, character. And puppeteers are the closest thing. They're cartoon characters, only in 3D. And when I was at Nick, you know, we were doing Eureka's Castle, and they're just a great gang. So I used a number of them.
Also, yeah, a great show too.
They're all wonderful.
Yeah.
And then also that's where I met Peter Lurie.
Oh
who
yeah, Peter Lurie.
hired
Yes.
as-
Peter, yeah, he's great.
Peter's great. And so are,
Yes,
another
yes.
team you'd be really interested to talk to would be our sound effects team. I could because they would go out in the woods and record whatever it is. They got the real thing. They weren't just using sound effects off a, do you know what I mean? They were creating it.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a good team. It was a good team. So yeah, so I mean, so Cyberchase, they were, again, you had to think of wacky news you could use, but then I used some writers that I'd had because they kind of were used to me.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's
That's
wonderful.
great. Similarly, when we kind of talked a little bit with that with Magic School Bus side of things, do you have any favorite Cyberchase episodes?
Oh, this is a real classic. So, one of the topics we were going to be doing is the number line, because it's the same audience as same in a school sense. What are they learning? And a number line is usually linear. And I'm sitting there, there ain't no way on a television screen to make that active. I mean, we won't get any perspective. We're just see people running off and then they go out of frame. Anyway. So we came up with this wonderful idea that there's this big honcho meeting of all the various big shots in cyberspace. Okay. And it's being held at the Twin Towers. Only the Twin Towers were not. They were like this. They were this way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
I was like, what is a kid's experience of a negative number? Where do they ever experience a negative number? If they know the word negative at all, it means no.
Right.
It doesn't mean.
Right.
And
It means like a bad thing or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's yeah. And it certainly doesn't connote value or amount. So what we did is we came up with the idea so that we were going to have them on top of each other like this. And somewhere in this tower, this meeting was being held. Okay. And everybody from cyberspace, who was anybody, was there. Except the hacker, of course. Now, the reason we did it this way is because you could get on an elevator and go down below zero. Oh. Or you go up above zero. Oh, oh, not this way, but turn it on its side so we
Right.
could use it. Okay. This is astounding. So hacker was notoriously cheap, and he was long overdue to service the Grim Reaper. And what happens? But he bangs in, he loses control of the Grim Reaper, and he lands right in the Twin Towers.
Mm. Right. Yeah.
Hadn't happened yet. Hadn't happened.
Right.
And so we do this whole story, and it's really funny because he literally just comes into the middle of the conference room, and everybody's, and he just it was just great. Well, so you get it all done, and you send it off to Korea. show came back from Korea the day before 9/11. The
Wow.
day before
Wow.
it arrived in
Wow.
North America.
Oh my
And we're
gosh.
like, and and then it's that day, and it's 9/11, and we're like, so we couldn't, it was horrible. It was just horrible because 9/11 was rough anyway, because just being in New Yorker, and just the whole thing was just awful. And then combined with that, WNET was the base for the Red Cross out of their building. And we're all working phones, and anyway, but the story is not so much about that, but the fact is the timing, the concept of, and we called it the Twin Towers. A bunch of New Yorkers like, oh yeah, it'd be really funny. Twin Towers go this way, So
And then
we,
that happened. It's just,
and
yeah.
then that happened. I mean, and you never could have imagined it. And so what we had to do is, and I forget how we did it. I just remember, there was no way we could throw it out. You know what I mean? We couldn't afford, it's already made. I mean, the big money has been spent. It only needs music and sound. So we remade it. I forget how we remade it. I forget. I have to tell you, I have to go back and watch it because my mind stops it, but
Yeah, it's
we did,
okay.
we
It was a long
did,
time ago too.
yeah, we did remake part of it,
Yeah.
but that was a biggie.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's insane. So aside from working on the show, you also supervise the design and branding of the
Right.
merchandise for Cyberchase. What kind of went into the merchandise?
Well, I mean, NET has their own merchandise and promotion, so it was really working in tandem with them, on what they may want to make, or what PBS may want to make. I mean, it was like, for me, it was like I had to be, the buck had to stop with me, so that it's like, no, you guys have it wrong. That's not the way we would do it. We would need something more, yeah, like that. So it was always, I mean, it was the same thing with School Bus, actually, because who knows the most about the show but me, because I'm everywhere. And it'd be great to hand it off to somebody else, but sometimes that's where the buck stops.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Oh my gosh. And what, I gotta mention, and when we're talking about Cyberchase, I gotta mention the amazing late Gilbert Gottfried.
Oh,
Oh my
Lord, yeah.
gosh.
That was my
yeah.
idea too.
Oh really? Oh
Hmm.
nice.
Oh
Uh
wow.
yeah, rest his
And I
soul.
was like, we need somebody really crazy. We need somebody real, and yeah, you had to, yeah,
Yeah.
it was definitely not
Yeah.
children's television material.
Yeah. So
Definitely. You never knew what was going to happen,
Yeah,
but
what's
it
his
was very
soul?
funny. It was very, very funny.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
He
and all
was
that just
absolutely.
kind of, I spent so much time in so many different worlds that you just kind of have this backlog of information.
Absolutely.
I
So
mean, I was just going to say, I mean, that was the whole idea with Little Richard on School Bus.
right,
Oh
yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
The
That's right.
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
Elastic very
Little
much
Richard, yeah.
wanted, the initial idea for the show, for the books, was that it was evergreen and it was really 50s. And and at that time, Little Richard had just put out an album for kids where he took all these various nursery rhymes and then he performed them in all different, from blues to Zydeco to, I mean, it's a great album. It's a great album. And so we called him up. And I mean, and as I said, Peter Lurie, I mean, it just is a great, talk about an evergreen theme song.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh
Definitely.
yes.
So
Mhm.
throughout your career, of course, aside from the ones we've already talked about, you are part of the development team of countless TV series. We've talked a lot about your work with PBS, but you've also developed shows for Nickelodeon and Hit Entertainment. What was that like?
Well, when you get asked to join a development team, it can go any number of ways that I remember going back to when we first arrived in New York, which would be Reading Rainbow. And
Yeah,
A great show. Yeah.
love that
yeah.
show.
Larry and Cecily were friends of ours. As a matter of fact, we introduced them to each other.
Okay.
They had both been in South Carolina with Hugh, working on Studio C, and we all came to New York around the same time. And so we just all consulted with one another a lot throughout those very early days. And then as they would, do other things like Puzzle Place and so on and so forth, I was always asked to join development team. And
Puzzle Place. Yeah.
yeah,
Another
Puzzle
great
Place
show too.
was really cute.
Talk about
Great show.
puppeteers. Wonderful
Yeah.
show.
Yeah,
Great show, yeah.
really. And then some other things, Jocelyn asked me to get involved with Thomas the Tank Engine when they were bringing that back. Espo was bringing it back. It's like, you're just people, you get asked, which is great, who know you're good at doing whatever. And if they have that hole in what they're trying to do. But then there's other things that, you develop but they never get the funding.
Right.
They never get the funding. Or which was classic with Nickelodeon, is that management changes. And so what you might have done just goes over here.
Right.
We're not going to go the road anymore in a commercial world. I was at Disney for a while too.
Right.
And that was interesting.
Yeah.
But it was the same thing. It was great because we were working with the Disney Imagineers. This is when Jerry Layburn was at Disney, and I knew her from Nick, and she asked me to join this team that was developing a new 24-hour network for kids. And we got real far, and then the money went away. And so it goes.
Okay.
That was called Zoog Disney.
Oh yeah, Zoog Disney. Yeah, I remember hearing a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Okay.
It was really fun.
Nice.
Definitely.
Yeah, I know you also develop other shows like Clifford and the Clarissa.
Oh yeah, that was why I was
All
scholastic.
too.
It's like, come on, get in here. We need.
Oh yeah.
We want your viewpoint. Yeah.
Starring someone else who we lost
something
now
like
over 20 years ago, John Ritter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and we also another previous guest of ours who worked on that show was Mike Young.
Yeah. Boy, that's going.
Mike. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's wonderful too.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. You got a lot of good. You got great folks. How long have you guys been doing this?
Well, we've been doing the show
for 3 years.
Yeah, a little over 3 years now. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
That's
3 years, over 200 something episodes. Yeah.
fantastic. Good for you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
That
means
really
a lot.
means a
Thank
lot.
you.
Yeah.
No, it's really.
I'm not
great.
too sure.
It's great because there's a whole huge body of work that's, well, I'll finish my little tidbit there when I said, I didn't know I was pregnant, and we finally have one child, Katie, who grew up with these shows, and now she is.
Oh wow.
She works in. As a matter of fact, we used to bring kids in to have focus groups, and I bring in Katie and some of her friends. What do you guys know about this topic? And blah blah blah. Katie now is a surgical PA.
Yeah.
And she wears her Magic School Bus jacket.
Oh,
that's great.
Oh
And
wow.
it's stopped all the time.
Oh my
It's fascinating.
gosh.
It's really, really fascinating to me, because to me it seems like a long time ago.
That's
But she's like,
great.
no, Ma, you don't know. She works at a hospital. She's like, Ma, you have no idea how many people who work in the sciences who were inspired by the stories.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Oh,
Oh, that's
that's
wonderful.
great.
Well, thank
I'm
you.
not sure. Oh, that's wonderful.
That's amazing.
I'm not so sure if it's just me or the info, because sometimes it can go right or wrong. But did you got to write an episode for Wee Rainbow?
Oh, I did. Yes, I did. I did Indian paintbrush.
Yeah, the Legend of
Legend
the
of the Indian
Indian
paintbrush, and we
paintbrush.
got a
Yeah,
Parisian for it. Yeah, we won a Parisian, which
Oh,
was
nice.
that was really, really, that was very fun to do, and it was a very different experience being. I mean, because I've written for my own shows, but writing for them, whom I also knew so well, was good, and I was glad we did well with it. Yeah.
Nice.
That's amazing. So, as we're getting close to wrapping up here, can you share any projects that you're currently working on, at least that you are allowed to talk about?
Not really. I have. Yeah, there's not really. I mean, I'm not as online as I used to be. So I'm really just consulting for the most part.
Mm.
I don't have the energy to take on a whole show. I've been asked and I've said, you know what? Been there, done that. And I want to go see Katie.
Right, makes sense.
I
Yeah,
wanna be like
Makes
that.
sense.
Yeah.
absolutely.
sense.
So to wrap this up, the last question that Jake's about to ask is a question we ask all of our guests at the end. Go ahead, Jake.
Thank you, Chris. So, of course, the podcast called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. When you think of nostalgia, what do you think of? In your own words, how would you define the word nostalgia?
I'd say love for things that you cherished at different parts of your life.
I love that. Great words
That's
to end on.
great.
Love
Thank you
that.
very much.
Yes.
Well, thank
Okay.
you, gentlemen. This has been delightful.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
Yes, this was awesome, Chris. And
Thank you very much, Kristin. It means a lot. Thank you so much of what you've done of your career over the years. I glad us got to grow up watching of what you've done and what you love all these shows. They were blessed to know them from so much my childhoods and video game chat with
That's
us
true.
about
I
all
mean,
that.
that just,
It means
it's like, be still my heart. Thank you. I'm glad you're still.
you're very welcome.
you're welcome. And to
We're
all
not
of our,
just a bunch of
Yeah, but keep up the
ballparks.
great work for you doing now. I cannot wait what's next in store.
yes, and to all of our viewers and listeners, thanks for tuning in to another wonderful episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. Kristen, thank you again for taking the time to do this.
Thanks
And
again.
keep on
Kristen, means a
lookout for
lot.
more wonderful interviews coming your way. As always, what do we say, Jake?
Keep nostalgia alive. Take care, everyone. See you next time. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have fun.
Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode. Be sure to follow Jake and the Happy Nostalgia team on social media, check out our website, and stream the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye.